Hello, my name is Jerron Vale from the Missouri Department of Higher Education and Workforce Development. Our equity project began a little over a year ago with a vision for addressing inequities and educational disparities for Missouri citizens. The department's desire is to build a careful process for addressing inequities and show our commitment toward equitable outcomes for all Missourians aligned with our vision to empower every Missourian with the skills and education needed for success. The Building Bridges series is an informative look at how Missouri's colleges, universities, and community organizations are addressing equity. We hope you learn from these shared experiences, and thank you again for joining us.
All right, thank you all for joining us for the March edition of Missouri Bridges to Success. My name is Jerron Vale, moderator here. Once again, I have Dr. Daniel McIntosh. Go through a couple preliminaries as usual, then we'll get started. Some housekeeping items. Session is being recorded and will be up on our website soon after the presentation. All attendees are muted upon entry, so continue to mute yourself to avoid any background noises or anything during the presentation. And please add your questions to the chat for the presenter. I do want to note that Dr. McIntosh is okay with you kind of unmuting and asking your questions throughout the presentation as well. If you want to do that also, rather than do chat, or you want to unmute yourself afterwards and just kind of have a dialogue back and forth, that's cool also. Dr. McIntosh is pretty flexible on that. And with that, I will introduce our speaker. Dr. McIntosh is let me stop sharing this here, sorry, and then I'll come back. Hold on one second. Dr. McIntosh is a distinguished professor and chair of MUKC Department of Physics and Astronomy. Since joining UMKC in 2008 as an astrophysicist with expertise in the cosmic development of galaxies, Dr. McIntosh has become an expert in broadening, and better preparing the future of the STEM workforce. He has initiated programs and developed strategic frameworks for improving student outcomes in foundational math and science courses, for providing underserved high schoolers confidence building early college experience in STEM, for providing students hands-on competency-based workforce preparation, and for facilitating faculty development in research, validated instructional practices. Professor McIntosh has been recognized for his efforts with the 2016 UM System President's Award for Innovative Teaching and the 2017 Norman Royal Professorship from MUKC College of Arts and Sciences. McIntosh served as the Provost Fellow and currently serves as the Director of STEM Education Innovation for the Missouri Institute for Defense and Energy to further his mission for helping STEM students from all backgrounds achieve their full potential. Thank you so much, Dr. McIntosh, for joining us. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jay Ron. And thank you to the organizers. I'm really excited to give this talk. I was reflecting as I was looking back through all my notes and slides from former presentations. I realized that I've given many presentations advocating and describing this program, but they've all been basically 5 to 10 minutes long because of the different venues. And so this is a first chance to really expand on this. Don't be panicked by 81 slides right there. That's not really 81 slides. I like to use transitions to help the flow. So what I'm going to do, I always like to give a little brief outline. I'm going to start right off with the key take-away message, the take-home message for this audience. Then I'll transition to motivating the need for this program and programs like it and frame my strategy. I'll describe the program's development and its role in my own personal growth and career trajectory, which has changed a lot from traditional STEM science faculty member at a university, a research university. I will outline how a Bridge to Stars works. I will describe success metrics and success factors, and I will end the presentation with lessons learned and challenges that I've discovered along the way towards meeting my long-term goal of scaling programs like this widely. And again, I am happy. Basically, the presentation should be something like a half an hour because I want to leave lots of time for question and answers. I'm also perfectly happy with anyone chiming in with a question and just breaking up the talk into kind of a discussion as we go. It does not bother me to be interrupted and answer questions. I love answering questions and having a discussion. So the key take-home message, the Bridge of Stars in a nutshell. I'm going to go ahead and read this. I don't usually read the slides, but I'll read this. It's an equity-minded initiative. It's designed to give historically underserved and underrepresented, primarily 10th and 11th grade students, an early college experience at a research university through tuition support, enrollment in an active learning course, and near-peer mentoring. In this course, the courses involved in this case are introductory to astronomy, general education, science courses here at UMKC. There's actually 2 of them. There's many benefits to the participants. They're basically having an immersive, confidence building experience to hopefully increase the likelihood that they matriculate to college and persist through their crucial first year. And just quick highlights on the outcomes from the program so far. I'll go into all this in much more detail through the talk, but we've over 11 semesters, 10 years now, we've given out 81 tuition scholarships to over 70 students. The representation is needs-based and high fraction of underrepresented minority students. I'm very proud of the success that we've had. 95% of these students have passed the course for college credit. And I think the really noteworthy thing, and we're working on a paper right now about this, is that there's no achievement gap between the high school bridge scholars in the program on average versus the nearly 1,000 UMKC students that are enrolled in the same courses along with these high school students. And then we have some long-term tracking, which is an ongoing process that we're working through. So how about, I want to motivate the program. First of all, in programs like this, I'm sure everyone in the audience is aware that there's a national need to make the STEM or the science and engineering workforce much more representative. And so this is something from the National Science Board. They have this goal, and I'm underscoring what they're really focusing on. If we want to make science and engineering in the country, in the workforce, much more representative, we need a much faster increase in terms of bringing students into the workforce to match representation by year 2030. That's only 8 years from now. And this report for their 2030 mission is just from 2 years ago. There's a link down here in the lower left. In detail, what they're getting at is we need to nearly double the number of women in science and engineering. We need to more than double the number of Black and African-American scientists and engineers, and we need to triple the number of Hispanic scientists and engineers to make the program, to have science and engineering workforce be representative of the population. These needs are also shared here in our state, where there's a lot of pressure to both increase the number of STEM degrees and also to broaden it. So just a couple examples of this. Here from 2019 data, again from the National Science Board, National Center for Student, I forget what NCSES stands for. It's related to the National Science Board and NSF. But basically, while Missouri is in the second from the top quartile for 4-year degree production overall, we're in the last quartile for degrees that are STEM, the fraction of degrees that are STEM. And then some examples of disparities as far as representation. So I'm showing 2 plots from recent data from Mid-American Regional Council. No, this is actually from Missouri Department of Higher Education's equity report. So we see that there's still a severe underrepresentation of Black students in STEM, and likewise for female students in STEM. These are just a couple examples. Now, how I like to think about this is using this often used and misleading illustration of what's called the leaky or leaking STEM pipeline. Now, this isn't a great metaphor because it suggests that there's only kind of one path to the workforce, and it's a lot more complex than that. And it kind of takes away, often we see this is more shown as a representation of what the problem is without thinking about how to address the challenge and do better from an institutional perspective. But a couple of things I want to highlight here is, first of all, at every step along the educational pathway from kindergarten all the way through grad school, we are losing disproportionately underserved and underrepresented students. This is exactly the problem. We need many more students to make it through this pipeline in whatever form that it is to actually meet those national goals I just described. I like to frame all this in terms, because the higher education footprint is where my purview and where my experience is. I think about it in terms of college student success. And I've highlighted here 5 key attrition points in the higher education pathway for students trying to get into the STEM workforce. So basically going from high school to getting a 4-year STEM degree to go into the workforce. And I'm very specifically defining student success, whether STEM majors or not, as gaining discipline-specific skills and content mastery, so they're better prepared for the workforce, gaining 21st century workforce skills. We used to call these so-called soft skills, again, to be more competitive, to enter the workforce and more prepared to enter the workforce, and to graduate with the STEM degree that the students started their college career with in a timely fashion, 4 years, so they don't have excess student debt. And so I've been working for the last 4 years on these 3 key attrition points: the high school to college transition. We have a lot of students leaving that are aspirational to go to college, but actually don't go to college. The first 2 years of math and science foundational courses, and workforce training in both the first couple of years and in junior and senior years for college students. And the Bridge to Stars really is focusing on, obviously, the high school to college transition. In all of these cases, I'm really thinking about this definition of college student success and trying to come up with and help facilitate changes that will address the challenges to growing the number of students entering the STEM workforce, better preparing them, and of course, broadening the representation. And I've been doing this work, as I've been doing this work, especially during the last 4 years, I've developed this framework for how I'm thinking about all of this, and also an overall aspirational goal. And so I think that for a long time, we're thinking about the way to increase representation in STEM had to do with giving more access, more opportunities to students to make it through. In other words, broadening participation and including students, but to really achieve inclusive excellence, to really get to this aspirational goal of having a representative STEM workforce and representation, no gaps in the educational outcomes through the college pathway, we need to do a lot more than just offer access to opportunity. We really need to be intentional in terms of student success. And I have basically come up with this framework of 3 strategies that I apply to all of the different initiatives that I've been working on or that I will work on in the future. And so it's all about being intentional. It's about intentional with regards to student learning, so using evidence-based practices, intentional with being equity-minded, so really thinking about the institution and how we can remove barriers to inclusion and facilitate more fostering of a sense of belonging for students. And in terms of trying to scale up and sustain large program, this is not a large program, to scale up this program to a larger program, whether it's across disciplines in a university or across institutions in a state or in a region, or even more broadly to the nation, really supporting faculty adoption and success, because faculty are at the front lines of these kind of initiatives. And so we have to be intentional to understanding and thinking about our institutional policies with regards to faculty roles and incentives if we do want to sustain this. Now, I want to give a quick example, for instance, of how Bridge to Stars is equity-minded. And so these are slides. This graphic is from the University of Southern California's Center for Urban Education. And they're showing the fact that, there's a difference between equality and equity. But as far as the Bridge to Stars goes, I'm just building off this. So I'm showing an example here, for instance, in terms of under low-income students, they are less likely to graduate with a college degree than high-income students. We know this is a common problem. So one way we're equity minded with the Bridge to the Stars is our scholarship selection to enter the Bridge to the Stars program is needs-based. The vast majority of our high school participants are free and reduced lunch, and that is one of the selection criteria. And then, of course, we have the even worse case for underrepresented students. Historically, underrepresented students, especially by race, encounter, we know in our systems, a lot of discouragements that may cause them to doubt their aspirations to go to college or complete college. And partly this has a lot to do with the sense of not belonging. And so a Bridge to the Stars scholarship selection is also based on aspirations, both for college and interest in STEM, rather than high school academic performance. Because if they're encountering a lot of discouragements and the sort of inequities that are illustrated in this diagram on the right-hand side, their high school performance might not look that great, though I believe personally there's a very large pool of capable and interested students from all backgrounds, but their high school record may not actually reflect their potential or their capability. And then most importantly, the program focuses on student success, again, using evidence-based teaching and mentoring practices. So back to my kind of the way I frame both Bridge to the Stars and the other initiatives I'm working on, and these three different approaches of intentionality. It was interesting as I was looking through all my notes and starting to look at the history of the development of the Bridge to the Stars program, I realized that it really played a huge role in my own professional growth and changes in my career trajectory, going from a traditional faculty member in science to thinking about more leadership roles, administrative roles to try to affect this kind of change. Essentially, for the rest of my career, this is where I want to focus my attention and my efforts. So I want to do a little fun trip down memory lane just to give a kind of sense of the development of the Bridge to the Stars program over its 10 years. And it was fun to realize that right now we're literally experiencing the 10th anniversary of this program. And here's a funny picture from back then in April of 2012. I was a pretty typical assistant professor, just hired at UMKC to build a new astronomy program and convert the Department of Physics into the Department of Physics and Astronomy. And we see here a group of students plus a new colleague on the far left was a recent hire, the second astronomer to our department, Dr. Broadwin is over there on the left. And we have our group of students at some conference here. Simultaneously, I was just becoming a member of the Missouri Space Grant Executive Board. And these slides are literally from a talk that I gave to the executive board. It was my second year on the executive board. And these slides are the initial proposal for a Bridge to the Stars. So it was pretty fun to find this. And when I joined the executive board, this is a NASA funded program. So just to give a quick overview of what what the space grant program is every single state in the country gets a pot of money every year from the federal government. This is a congressional appropriation. It's been now 30 years long. Basically to give out fellowships and scholarships for students in anything related to space science and engineering. And each state basically builds a consortium of institutions. In Missouri, there's 7 or 8 institutions that are part of the Missouri Space Grant Consortium, and members from each of the institutions serve on the executive board. And I did that for 9 years, from 2010 to 2018. And so from their perspective, a big motivation to bringing me on board and to having a greater presence from UMKC is that every single state has mandates by NASA and the federal government to meet certain target demographics in terms of gender and race. And they saw, especially as a function of race, Kansas City as an important place for this because we have a very diverse student population. And so based on this motivation, looking at my initial proposal, you can see that I talk about the need. So we're aware back then, like we are now, that there's a real need for increasing representation of students. I defined the problem, and this is important. What I realized as I was thinking about things is that most attempts to bring underserved or underrepresented students into science and engineering that I had witnessed being a university professor and before when I was a postdoc and a grad student, either typically involved a very brief interaction where a scientist goes to a high school and gives a talk, maybe to inspire some students, but that's a 45-minute, hour-long exposure, and it doesn't have a real stick to it in terms of sticking with the students, I believe, or so-called exceptional or high-performing underrepresented high school students receive support and scholarships, which are important for sure to get into, basically to improve their opportunity and participation in STEM degree programs across the United States, often scholarships and free rides. And that's great, but if you only focus on the very high performing high school students, the straight A students, whatever, however you want to characterize them, that's not a path to changing the numbers towards representation in a hurry, because those often represent a very small number of underrepresented students that would be capable and interested in having a STEM career. So we talk about the need, the problem, and then the solution. And so the solution here, juxtaposed against the problem, is that we have students come to UMKC and have a full semester long experience with a professional astronomer, myself, in an introductory astronomy course. And so they're getting a lot of contact time, something like 30 or more hours. It maximizes my impact. I was already leading a lot of student-centered and high impact practice teaching in these classes. And it also brought in the best practice of having near peer mentors help these students succeed in this class. Now, despite some embarrassing now at this point language on my part, I think this language represents the indoctrination that I had in the common weed out culture of STEM at universities across the country, that everything's kind of framed in terms of we seek excellence and we only we basically weed students out to get to the top students. And so you can see this language from 10 years ago in my initial proposal. But despite that, and I've learned a lot, I am proud because at the same time, I was developing this nascent guiding hypothesis, which basically boils down to increasing the representation in meaningful amounts requires engaging a much larger pool of capable and curious and interested students in meaningful ways, as I described. A couple more quick things on trip down memory lane. So the next couple of years of hard work, establish a network of partners both on campus and in the community, not just in local high schools, but also with some non-NGO partners that are focused on college success, STEM education, et cetera. By 2015, we expanded to even more local high schools with largely high needs and large fraction of underrepresented student populations, as you can see in this graph. And by the middle of 2016, I gave my first national conference. This is an astronomy conference about this program, and gave a talk, very brief talk, I think it was 5 or 6 minutes long, where I shared some of the successes and basically the idea of the program to try to see if other people would be interested in scaling up the same thing at their own institution. In 2016, I added, this is a really important development, I added Derek here. He was a 2-term near peer mentor, and then I hired him on as a development intern, and he developed out some much better advertising for promoting the program and some process for kind of informal long-term tracking through surveying, which was extremely helpful. January 2017, now I'm going back to these conferences, again, another astronomy national conference, and I'm starting to advocate for scaling up like-minded programs. And I'm using language like this that I still think holds well, such that transforming the diversity in STEM will require a huge change, or really a sea change in the way that we recruit and engage and prepare. And the engagement really is how we do all these things. To significantly increase the number. So I'm starting to think about this. You can see my evolution. And also, interestingly, January 2017 marks it's just a couple months before the first time I submitted a large-scale campus-wide proposal to the NSF on other broadening success in STEM initiatives. And so I'm really starting to go down that career trajectory at that point right there. And then finally, just for fun, I love to share this this picture. It shows 4 mentors in 2018. This is at Rolla at one of the Space Grant meetings. They put together a poster, and they really started to take ownership in their role in the Bridge to the Stars. And what's fun about this is, first of all the students, they really helped me see the potential of undergrads, both in their desire to do these kind of programs to help students, to give kind of to their younger student community, and just how much they could help, and how well they could help advocate and promote the program. And so just for a couple examples, in the center, kind of kneeling down, is Jamie with glasses. She went on to be the next development intern. She was super proactive in making posters and giving talks about a Bridge to the Stars. When she would go to national conferences that I couldn't attend, she would take it on herself to initiate this. She now just entered the PhD programs for exoplanetary research, which is really exciting. Literally, she's just getting her offers in this last month, and we'll start in the fall. To the left of her is Lauren, who I know is in the audience. Lauren was one of our mentors for a number of years and is now the latest intern. Now she's a grad student here at UMKC, and she has a part-time graduate research assistantship with me, and she's been helping do a lot of the really hard and important work of organizing and analyzing the data that we will publish about this program in our first publication coming out. And then kneeling down in the center is Rubai. Rubai was a 2-time Bridge to the Stars scholar who then came to UMKC and became a mentor for 3 or 4 semesters, and was really great. And Osiris on the right was a fantastic role model mentor for the students in the couple of years that he mentored. So how does a Bridge to the Stars work? I developed this little slideshow to kind of give you a sense of the way that it all rolls out. So during the fall semester, in preparation for a spring course, we do the promotion of the program, recruit the high school students and mentors, and enroll the high school students in the course. And so all of this, like we essentially have, in a nutshell, the program consists of our high school feeder schools, the actual semester-long immersion, which is this introductory science course, and then all that's pointing towards this mission of the Bridge to the Stars, which is basically sustained the entire time. So to do this, we need important partners and infrastructure, which I'm showing in the dashed line, such as this. So for instance, our community partnership right now composes of 14 local high schools. Actually, one of them is no longer in existence, but we've been growing over time. We started with just one, which is Hogan Prep Academy, the first couple semesters. We've grown to 14 schools. The development intern, again, helped produce these nice nomination guidelines and online applications, essentially to recruit and funnel interested high school students into our program. And I represent the high school students with the solid line. And then NASA funding through the Space Grant has paid for the scholarships, the tuition scholarships for the high school students to take the course, and paid for the near-peer internships. To give you an example of how the fall process works, we developed a flyer like this that we give to our high school contacts and other local partners to promote the program. And the idea is we're trying to get the teachers to nominate students, to point students towards this program and point them towards our program webpage so that they can actually go there, watch a little video about the program, read about the program, and then sign up on their own on an online survey. So again, this online survey is just our way of capturing demographic information for participation. And then we have, instead of an essay, we have 4 simple questions to try to gauge the students' college aspirations and just general interest in astronomy or STEM. There's a neat thing that's added in here, which is the students would enter a faculty member's, a teacher's, or high school counselor's, guidance counselor's email address, whoever nominated them to do this. And this survey would automatically send that high school contact another little survey, take them 2 minutes to fill out. Basically, it's a recommendation form. And so this is a way to create a closed loop. So we have the high school teachers are suggesting to students, you should check out this program. And the students take the proactive step to go apply. They're putting in that teacher's contact information. The teachers get communicated back that the student actually did follow through, and then they can do this little recommendation thing. To be honest and transparent, I don't use the teacher recommendation for selection. It's mainly just to create that closed loop. I don't really use it. It would be a very, I should step back and say, I would only use the information that comes from here if there was, in terms of you can see down here, there's a couple questions, 4, 5, and 6, and there's a little Likert scale. If for whatever reason, somehow the student came across this web page on their own, signed up for it, they put in a teacher name, and the teacher gave recommendations that were suggesting the student wasn't prepared for an opportunity like this, I would take that into consideration, though I would weight it pretty low. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is what we care about is, are the students interested in this program? Because they're going to come to college 3 days a week after high school, and that's a time commitment. Are they ready and willing to do that is really what we're trying to measure. Otherwise, it's nothing about grades, nothing about their performance academically. And so there's deadlines, basically we send this stuff out in the middle of September, and by mid of October, we're asking for the students to complete their online application in the upper right. And then by early November, we do our selection and send out notifications to the students that they have been awarded the tuition scholarship, and we start to enroll them into the class for the spring. And then the spring semester, the logistics are the onboarding, learning, and offboarding. And so the week before the semester starts, we do this really great orientation with the scholars. You can see on the left, we do all kinds of things in a 3.5 hour period, including pizza, dinner. We give them a tour of the campus. We get them their student ID cards, which represent, it's like a bus pass that gets them to UMKC, and it also gets them into different resources across campus, like the gym. I already said we do a little tour of the campus, and then we end with a fun dinner. The parents come back, and we give the students some resources like Contract for Success and Keys to Success for the Bridge to Stars program. And then we have a partnership on campus where we also do a mentoring for the mentors that I've hired in the fall, some training with the academic advising coordinators here on campus. That's part of our orientations the week before the semester. Then the semester is the full immersion in the student-centered course. You can see there's lots of benefits for the scholars that are in this class. And then at the end of the semester, we have a little celebration with all of our scholars, another pizza dinner, and take pictures, have some fun, and we do college preparatory advising. And of course, we're working on long-term tracking, which a development intern has helped. So lots of logistics. The success metrics for the program, which we put over here on the left. So what I'm showing you in this figure is the grades of the scholars for each of the semesters. So the scholars' individual grades, this is a straight scale in the course. So basically 70% is a C. You see the green points represent all of our scholars. So the 81 scholarships. The solid black squares represent the average grade of those scholars for that semester. The open black squares with the error bar represents the average grade in the same course for the UMKC near peer students. And then the error bars represent the kind of 25 to 75 percentile spread. So the square represents the median, basically. And so we can see a couple of things here from this data. Our 95% success rate, basically 95% of the scholars that got a tuition scholarship completed the class with a grade of D or better, which is passing for college credit. Back to the no achievement gap. So you can see on average, the black solid points, they bounce around from semester to semester, but on average, the scholar course grades are the same, roughly a B minus, as over 800 peer UMKC students, and there's a similar spread. I mean, there's variation from semester to semester. And another thing that's really fun to highlight here is a lot of the semesters among the top 10 students are bridge scholars. So for instance, here in the spring of 2015, the top student out of 101 enrolled in this particular intro astronomy class was one of the bridge scholars. So you can see the total number of enrollment in the course, and then scholars that represented, number 1 or number 2 or number 7 in the class in terms of their grade. We've done informal surveying within 1 year of the program, and about half of the students have responded to that survey. And of those respondents, nearly 3/4 of them said they planned, this is shortly after the program, within a year, so maybe they haven't gone to college yet if they're a 10th, 11th grader, but they plan to pursue a 4-year STEM degree. And then we have a collection of data that's pretty incomplete, and we need to keep on working on this. So this is preliminary findings, but at least 40% of the scholars did pursue or are pursuing a STEM degree, and about 60% of that, 29, is has or did or are pursuing a STEM degree. So that really represents a minimum of 1/4 of all the bridge scholars to this point. And then we also know from this data that about 75% of the scholars that are known to be pursuing or did pursue the degree have either completed it or on track to. In other words, 25% dropped out of college on the way to pursuing a 4-year degree. And then I just have a couple of fun quotes. I'm just going to post them up here for a second, kind of highlight it. These are, we don't have names for the students right now. We have to reach out and ask, but this is basically select written feedback from our informal surveying. And so you can see in the upper left, talking about the confidence and understanding what college is like, and also gaining confidence to succeed in STEM. I love this upper left quote when the student talks about, I was never really good, quote unquote, at math, but the program taught them that STEM goes way beyond math and that there's much more to STEM and science than just math. There's lots of concepts and so forth. Again, the middle comment talks about how this program authentically gave them a first look at what college is like and realistically prepared them for college courses. And the bottom one talks again about how college works and giving them a network of connections, which is an important thing. So like we have a LinkedIn network, and so the students can have a network with future scholars and former scholars and the mentors and so forth. Okay, success factors. There's 2 key success factors. The program is intentional to student engagement and learning, and we do that through active learning. And just in a quick nutshell, I do active learning as follows. I follow these 4 guiding principles. Basically, each classroom experience the Bridge Star Scholars experience, half of that lecture time is dedicated to special design activities where they can work with their peers in really struggling and practicing through the higher order thinking and problem solving, skill development and mastery of the content in the presence of their instructor. I do this, what I mean by authentic is I do it every single lecture, many times a lecture. That also gets to frequency. And I'm very intentional about being inclusive and encouraging. There are not, for instance, when students participate in these activities, the grading rubric for participation is everything about how they participate, not right answers, because the process of learning is kind of working through wrong answers, right answers, misconceptions, uncertainties. And that's a very powerful learning experience. And you can't be discouraging by doing such things as we will have you vote on an answer to a question, but if you get the first attempt at your answer incorrect, we're going to deduct points. It's not very useful. So, and just a quick take-home messages from a previous talk I gave. Active learning, these strategies I just described, is student-centered learning or student-centered teaching, and the research is overwhelming in how effective this type of teaching is when it's implemented well, such as what I described with intentionality and those 4 guiding principles on the previous slide. So this is research validated. The evidence is just overwhelming. All the national stakeholders in STEM are advocating very strongly that institutes of higher education should facilitate the wide adoption of these kind of teaching and learning strategies. Our other success factor is near peer mentoring. So besides going to school each week for 2 lecture sessions in the course, the students also come to, the Bridge Scholars also come to campus for a 3rd day where they engage just with the other scholars and their near peer mentors. And you can see on the left, each mentoring session covers a whole bunch of activities and practices. And just for fun, I've highlighted in all of our pictures here, all of the many mentors that have been involved over the history of the program. And this isn't all of them. We've had 21 students. Some of them have done 3-4 semesters of mentoring. And I'm proud of the fact that these are selected not just from our degree program, but from 9 degree programs across campus, including non-STEM degree programs. There's a lot of students out there that want to participate in programs like this and help other students. All right, so I'm winding down now. Program challenges and key lessons learned. This is my general hypothesis, which I already described. Couple quick things that come to mind. Running a program like this is a lot of work for any faculty member to do on their own, roughly 10% of their work per semester. And the extra work of evaluating a program requires not just extra work in addition to that 10%, but proactive planning. So we've learned a lot over the 10 years about what if I could go back and start over again, I would have very specific ways of doing long-term tracking and analyzing that data. We kind of kept on evolving over the 10 years to get to the point where we're now. And this last point, this basically in higher education right now, the faculty promotion and merit practices really don't adequately account for this type of workload. This is a huge barrier for us, especially in the schools with high underrepresented percentages of underrepresented students. They just traditionally have very high turnover rates for guidance counselors and teachers. So we make a contact with a teacher that will promote our program and give students information, nominate students to go to the website and sign up. But the turnover is so great, we just keep on losing contacts. And so it's just a lot of work in keeping that network going so we can have consistent recruitment from the same schools. So like 1 year we'll have a great bunch of students from one school, we have a great contact, that person leaves, we lose that school altogether for a year or 2 before we can find someone else. And it is a lot of work and a big challenge. And again, trying to go beyond just running a program like a Bridge to Stars in one class for one discipline, that's a lot of work. It's even more work way beyond the capacity of a typical faculty role and responsibility to try to scale up or sustain a program like this really long term. Okay, my last couple slides. Ultimately, as this program grew and my professional career trajectory changed more and more towards missions like increasing the representation and success of students in STEM, I've developed this long-term goal of wanting to help others, other institutions, other faculty members adopt similar programs to do this kind of work. And I've tried a bunch of different things, and I'm going to share my failures first. I've had no success in grassroots advocacy. So I've gone to multiple national conferences in astronomy. I haven't gone to STEM conferences. I need to do that. And I've given, at the end of the talk, I've given kind of blurbs like we see in this box right here. And so I try to appeal to faculty in terms of if you took on this high workload, it is a great way of combining your service and teaching efforts. It's addressing national challenges. So if you want to write broader impacts for national funding agencies like the NSF, you develop a program like this that'll make you more competitive. And if you create something that's really visible, this is something your upper administration might find positive. And so I tried that route. I've had no success. I've tried as a lone faculty member to propose to large foundations and federal agencies and kind of using words like this to motivate it. So far, not much success there either. So the national NASA space grant has funded Bridge to Stars the entire time through the Missouri Space Grant, but there actually aren't that many national calls that I've seen so far that would fit the Bridge to Stars model. NSF typically doesn't fund the kind of high school to college transition, at least that I found. I'm totally interested if people know of potential foundations or federal agencies that would be interested in programs like this, especially scaling it up to other institutions, I would love to hear about it. I'm happy to write proposals. I've written proposals, but they're kind of few and far between, and so far no success. And then advocating, with campus leadership for inclusion of programs like this in institutional strategic planning is also hard, because institutes of higher education are very complex enterprises. There's lots of competing needs and pressures and challenges. And so trying to get a seat at the table and get across like this need, like a presentation like this, it's just hard. And it's like, I understand the challenges and I understand how complex it is. It's just, I don't think a single faculty member, what I've experienced is just hard to go that route. So ending, let's talk about, if you are interested or others are interested in scaling up a program like this, I've quickly outlined the necessary ingredients for doing this. So again, institutional leadership really is essential to scale up across many disciplines. And so one lever that a person would have, and I've tried to use this, is that this is really getting at institutional recruitment. I did not develop a Bridge of Stars to recruit students to UMKC, though more than 10% of the scholars have come to UMKC, which is a pretty good metric. But what higher institution leadership is interested in and concerned about, a top line item for them is increased enrollment. So I think there's a way to leverage that towards buy-in from campus leaders to scale up programs like this. I would suggest one way to scale this up, like an important ingredient, important ingredient is that you need general education science courses, and you need them to be scheduled during the academic semester, but after normal high school hours, because you're bringing high school students to campus for a real early college experience. This is obviously key. Dynamic faculty instructors that are committed and have a passion for helping students using evidence-based practices. And then there's a whole bunch of things that have to happen, which accounts for this kind of 10% of workload a semester: recruiting, selecting, supervising interns, overseeing the recruitment selection of the high school participants, coordinating with campus offices for enrollment and tuition scholarships, and the list goes on. A lot of this work could be assigned to administrative support, maybe a dedicated person or a part-time person. But these are the kind of all of the necessary ingredients that I've learned about through doing a Bridge to the Stars. And so in summary, this is a successful 10-year program. I believe it provides a role model for broadening the successful transition of students, more students from high school to college, whether in STEM or not. I've said what my long-term goal is, and I really do welcome feedback and collaboration. That took longer than I thought, but I'm ready for questions.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. McIntyre. We appreciate it. Don't have any questions at the moment in chat, but I would like to follow up on a couple things. You stated that you're targeting not just the high-performing students, but also those that might be, under that threshold. Do you see any hesitancy as far as the other, that maybe they're interested in science, but not so much the math, the English, and how do you work with those different department relationships to kind of ease students, I guess, anxiety about any subjects outside of science?
Okay, so thank you for that question. So in terms of Bridge to the Stars, where they're taking, again, it's an introductory general education science class. It's introductory to astronomy. There's kind of different versions of this. This is a traditional course that's taught, versions of it all over the nation. Something like 1 million college students a year take an intro astronomy course. And it's general education science. It's often focused on quantitative reasoning, in other words, mathematical problem solving, but it's done in traditionally lecture-based, just pure lecture, and a kind of overemphasis on algebraic problem solving that really has no meaning to the students. So I've completely upended that in my introductory astronomy courses. There's quantitative reasoning. They're looking at graphs of information and talking with each other and thinking about how trends and relationships in quantitative data, but I'm not asking them to do math problems. I'm really focusing on concepts, and kind of the top comments I get from students, not just the bridge students, but students taking these courses with me, are things like, why aren't all my classes taught this way? Meaning the active learning way, where they're engaged actively in problem solving together and working through these activities. And many students talk about not being surprised how much success they could have in a science class, because science is way more about understanding and synthesizing concepts and connections and how things work rather than mathematical problem solving. So I've rechanged the focus and move it away from math. That doesn't really address part of your question, is how do you deal with math anxiety or math hesitancy, and what can happen within other departments. That's a whole other talk, and that gets into another priority I'm focusing on, which is that first 2 years of the Gateway STEM curriculum. Actually, that's key. And again, active learning plays a role for more students to have success in these highly math dependent and math focused coursework in the first 2 years of college for STEM degrees. I lost my train of thought. Sorry. So.
No, that's okay. Sorry. Thank you so much.
Oh, I know. I was going to say the Bridge to Stars, and realizing that my goal for Bridge to Stars was to get more students that might have these anxieties that you're talking about. So they're aspirational, they're capable, but maybe they're not as well prepared. We know there's some math gaps for high school kids, especially from underserved high schools. Getting them interested, building up their confidence. They go to college, and I think, okay, if they run into the traditional weed out culture the first 2 years of a typical STEM degree program, which is the same here as it is pretty much everywhere else, in a way, I'm doing there's an ethics problem there for me, because I'm building up their confidence. They're getting a sense of belonging, which is important, but now they're going off into another program and they're encountering this terrible weed out machine for the first 2 years, where the vast majority of the dropout happens. And so that actually motivated me to put a lot of work into that area. And I just gave a talk a couple of weeks ago about making the case for scaling up active learning, which I barely touched on today. And to me, that really is the primary place I would focus. If I think about my 3 priorities, this high school to college transition is number 2. That success in the first 2 years is all important. So it's a big, complex problem, and it does get at what you're talking about. And active learning seems to be the key.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Again, put your questions in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, you can. The few minutes we have left. I did want to hit on one more thing. With the mentors, when they finish their programs, have you had any interest of them coming back to assist you with a lot of the work of trying to get the outreach going, and how's that going for you?
Yeah, that's why I show the picture of some of the mentors. For instance, I don't know if you can see the pointer here, but on this picture right here, Lauren is in there. She's in the audience, and Rubaiyat. The short answer is absolutely yes. And even as whether they've gone off to school, grad school, gone into the workforce, for instance, Derek, who was one of my first mentors and the first development intern, he works for Kansas City Big Brothers and Sisters. He's a huge proponent. There's a lot of interest. Lauren is working on the project as part of her graduate education and will be a co-author in the paper. Jamie, who was our second development intern, was just amazing in terms of how proactive she was about wanting to be more involved and grow the program. And actually, I had to put the program on hold this spring, partly because of COVID and partly because I have a big Navy funded project I'm standing up for my 3rd priority of workforce development. And I just didn't have the capacity to run it again. And I felt bad. And those former mentors, were, really, the hardest part of that decision was them pushing me, can't we just try to keep it going? Like, how can we help? So yes, they're super, super interested and engaged, which is to me, there's a big lesson there as well, is that undergrad students can help a lot and are really interested in helping a lot if you do it in a structured and intentional way.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Anyone else want to ask a question? Feel free to unmute yourself or chat. All right, hearing none, I don't see anything else in the chat. I do appreciate your time, Dr. McIntosh. Really appreciate it. We have your contact information. So yeah, if you have it, as you say, if you want to chat, collaborate, that'd be great. So this is really good, really insightful. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you all for being with us. And we'll be back in April. Thank you so much, Dr. McIntosh. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, J. Ron. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, cool. Take care. Thank you.